Welcome back to the Swedish Deal. This is a new episode where we're going to talk to Martin Jacobson, fellow Swede, of course, but we're going to do it in English for more people to understand what we're talking about. Martin, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. It's good to be back on the Swedish Deal. I believe I was one of the first guests.
You were the first.
You launched the channel, yeah, so it's great to be back.
Yeah, good. Tell me where you are right now.
I'm in Vegas right now. I've been here for about 2 weeks. There's been a series at the Wynn, and I just happened to have a ski trip plan in Whistler at the end of March, so it just worked out perfectly. I was quite tempted to go to Triton in Vietnam. Everyone was talking about it. I knew it was going to be a great series, but in the end, I chose to go to Vegas.
Yeah. I followed the series pretty hard. I mean, what kind of dough do you need to be able to go to series like that? I mean, you have to.
Which one?
The Triton, the Triton.
The Triton one? Yeah, it's pretty absurd. Like what's happening right now with the buy-ins. It's escalated quite quickly. But they are running some smaller events too. You know, like the cheapest one is like 15,000 in entry, and it's all re-entries as well. So it can really escalate quickly. So of course, like you would have to sell some action, but yeah, it's quite a lot more stressful than coming here and playing a 3,500 main event where you have a significantly higher ROI and you don't need to sell action and just so I mean that swayed my decision as well. In general, I don't like selling action to events. I like having a bigger piece of myself. Like I don't mind swapping some to reduce the variance, but selling action has like really never been my thing. So I would like to like build up with a bankroll where I can actually afford to play these like 25K re-entries without having to sell action.
Yeah, of course. And have you taken part in the Tritons before?
No, actually never. That's why it's grown a lot in recent years. I feel like every series is just getting bigger and bigger. So it's definitely something I'm looking at in the future. I believe the next one is in Cyprus, and I think that they've announced one in London again. So I'll definitely check out the London one if I'm there.
Yeah. The goal for this talk is to touch on the poker a little bit, but also look into the UFC. There's a big thing in London this Saturday where I gotta be and with some friends. And I know you're a pretty big MMA fan. Are you still that, Martin?
Yeah, man, I'm a diehard MMA fan. I don't think I've missed a card since I started watching it in, I believe, like 2011. So I've been watching like basically every card since, 12 years back. I'm pretty deep into it, and I like to research the fights and watch a lot of tape and stuff, and really think about how each matchup will play out. And it's quite similar to poker in that regard. It's a very strategic game. Like it might look brutal when you're watching it on TV and just see two people punching each other, but if you really dive deep and really study the underlying techniques and how two different matchups matches up versus each other, and where who has the edge where, and like all the different skill sets that goes into it, it's actually a lot deeper than you might think.
I talked to Lex Veldhuis a little bit in Paris when we were there, and we're going to talk this week as well before the UFC, since he's a big fan. He said, I'd like to talk a little bit about what is similar between poker and UFC, if there are any similarities. Can you find something there?
Yeah, I think there's similarities in that they're both strategic games, especially if you compare it to Heads Up No Limit, where it's just you versus another opponent and you're trying to exploit your opponent's weaknesses, right? So it's quite similar in the sense that as fighters you can play, if you're both equally matched, you're both fighting in equilibrium, then neither guy really has an edge. But that's rarely the case. Like someone's always going to have a skill edge somewhere, and then the other opponent is usually has a different skill set. So let's say one is a grappler and one is a striker, which is like the traditional matchup. And then obviously the grappler is going to want to take the fight to the ground and utilize his advantages there and exploit the striker's weakness in lack of grappling. Whereas the striker is going to have a significant advantage, and each fight starts on the feet as well. So it's all about like how, and then it just comes down to his takedown defense. So if the striker has a really poor takedown defense, then the grappler's probably easily going to take the fight to the ground, and that's going to be a significant advantage. But if the striker has great takedown defense, he might not have a great ground game, but if he has a great takedown defense, he's good at sprawling and keeping the fight standing, then you really have to favor that opponent.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it became big in the late '90s. It started to grow, and then it became bigger in the first years of 2000. And what caught your attention to the sport? Because I know you work out a lot, but what caught your attention from the start?
What caught my attention from the start? I had a friend that was really into it, and he showed it to me one time. I remember I believe we were in Tallinn for EPT. This was back 2011, and he showed me this, and I got really hooked straight away because he liked to bet on it as well. So he convinced me to do a huge parlay where he was picking the fights, he was picking the matchups, and then we just made like a 12-leg parlay. So we parlayed every single fight on the card, and we put some like ridiculous number on it, like way out of our bankroll. And somehow it magically hit.
Wow, are you serious?
Yeah, it's like when you play poker for your first time and you somehow win the tournament. Like obviously you're gonna be hooked after that. So
do you remember the numbers that you put up and the money you won?
I believe we were betting on some Swedish bookie, and I believe we put like 5,000 Swedish kroner on it or something, which is
$500,
$800 or something. On this 12-leg parlay, and it hit for I like to say there was a lot of favorites that he picked, and we ran good there. There wasn't a lot of huge underdogs, but I would like to say that we won like something like around 100,000.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty big. I mean, that's a typical old Swedish thing to play Stryktipset, which is football, 13 games you need to hit. Not the results, but the who wins or if it's a draw. And then also the horses is a big thing in Sweden when it comes to trotting. Have you been into gambling, like sports betting and stuff in your younger years as well?
Yeah, I've always been drawn to sports betting, especially I think what entices me is when you can have an edge in something. So like poker, for example, sports betting, if you do your research and you're not just gambling, then like you can actually have an edge if you study it well and you put in the work. But like gambling just to be gambling is not something that's super exciting to me. It's kind of like I've lost interest for it as I realized that there's actually, a clear edge in every form of gambling, and you don't want to be on the losing end of it. So that just kind of loses the appeal of pure gambling. But like when you can bet on something and research it and actually like think about it from a deeper level and then try to outsmart who you're betting against, and I like that as a form of entertainment and also like a side hustle.
I mean, you like to play odds that are kind of at least even. So you would say that gambling would be something that you should do for fun and for a limited amount of money to hang out with your friends maybe, but that's it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so sports betting and what makes MMA a good sports betting sport? I mean, of course, you can find out some information, right? And of course, is it also that it's so much more exciting to watch it when you have money on it?
I think what makes it a good sport to bet on is that it's a fairly new sport. It hasn't been around that long. So I think there's more opportunities there than if you compare it to other sports that have been around for longer and has way bigger betting volume like the NFL or NBA or something, and also has a much bigger sample size. So most fighters, they only fight like 3 or 4 times a year. And that's nothing compared to other sports where in the NBA, they might play like over 100 games in the season. So you have a lot more data there to track. So you really look. It's very rare that 2 fighters have fought each other before. Like it only happens, if it's a championship fight, really, and one of them loses their belt and they have a rematch. But other than that, it's just new matchups all the time. So you really have to look at statistical data for those two opponents, who they fought in the past, and then how they matched up versus guys or girls with similar skill sets.
Yeah, of course. There it is. Okay, so I know that you went to Vegas a couple of weeks ago, and you managed to see a pretty nice big event there, didn't you?
Yeah, I went to John Jones fight, which was fun.
Yeah, was it a good card? Was it a good overall?
It was a great card. Yeah, I thought that it was. I mean, it was a good name value card. There was a lot of big names on there. 2 championship fights, but I thought that most of them, the fights delivered. The main event was like a little bit disappointing because it ended so quickly, and I was pretty big on the game. I thought that that was like a really good scenario, like really good spot, because Jones was obviously like the betting favorite, and like a household name. Everyone knows who Jones is, but like no one really knows who Gane is. So, and all the publicity and all the marketing around that fight was just on Jones, obviously, because he's the household name and the clear favorite.
Yeah.
But if you looked at the betting line as the odds maker, they opened Gane as a minus 160 favorite. So he was a pretty significant favorite in the opening line, and then money kept coming in on Jones, and I think it closed around Jones minus 180, and Gane coming back on Gane like plus 150.
Right.
So the line completely flipped there, which, sure, it could be sharp money, but like every sharp that where I get my info from was on Gane. So more likely than not, it was just public money steaming on the Jones line.
Yeah, which is a classical situation where you're able to pick up money. That's what you go for. It's like if you're a Swede and want to play in Sweden, you always play against Sweden because the Swedish team is overplayed, isn't it? Aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that was kind of upsetting, especially the way it went down. I mean, were you impressed with Jones? I guess you were.
Yeah, I mean, sure, it was impressive what he did and how quickly he did it, but I thought it's pretty poor performance from Gane as well. I'm sure he would like to run that back and do things differently. But it was interesting afterwards. I knew that Jones had been training with Henry Cejudo, Team Fight Ready, and then they posted a video of them drilling that exact position where he got Gane in like a seatbelt position, and just like stayed on it and dragged him to the ground, and then I was able to finish him there.
And that video was from before the fight, of course, where he practiced.
Well, yeah, man. You would think so.
And he could. Jones was maybe just too strong. He just couldn't defend himself. I guess.
But he looked kind of out of shape. He didn't look like he had put on that much muscle. It just looked like he was, I don't know. I really like, if I could go back, I would bet Gane again at that number. I just, it just happened that it went down like that in that fight. Like, there's a lot of variance in MMA betting too, obviously. Like, it's just 2 opponents. So if something like that goes down, like, there's nothing you can do. But it's important to not be result oriented either. You have to look at it from a rational perspective and just be analytical and think about the matchups
Of course.
and the price you're getting.
Of course. And I asked you if you were in London this Saturday and if you were able to come with us, me and my friends, to the UFC 286 in London. And I mean, unfortunately, you're not at home, but you're in a good spot, so that's okay. Is it bothering you that when UFC comes to London, your hometown, that you're not there?
A little bit, yeah, especially because this card that they put on now, it's actually the best London card I've ever seen.
For sure.
Usually, yeah, it's really good names on there. It's massive, but usually, like historically, they've put on some London cards in the past, and it's been kind of meh. It's like, you know, usually local guys that they're trying to build up, but they usually don't even like fly over to the top names from the US. So it's usually just like a bunch of no-name like Europeans.
Yeah. Maybe one or two. I mean, usually one good fight and one semi-good fight, and then the rest. But this is a really stacked card, especially for being a European soil. So
yeah, and there's a lot of good matchups. There's also not just like one big name, and then a squash mashup, but it's actually like solid matchups, like both in the main and the co-main, I think.
Yeah, well, we're gonna go through the main card a little bit, Martin, since you know a lot of the fighters, and there's, I mean, from when we grew up and from the European, especially the Swedish way of looking at it, usually we don't say minus 140, for example. We say this guy gives 2 times the money and this guy gives 180.
Yeah.
Which is kind of not perfect for, but I guess if we say if someone is at 140, we mean that if you bet $100, you get 140 back, and the other guy is 290, you bet $100, you get 290 back.
Yeah.
So
decimals.
Those are the numbers I'm looking at when I look at this card and see if they were, if there would be something. I mean, you still have a lot to do until Saturday, but will you be betting on many matches?
Probably, yeah. I usually have a fair amount. It depends, though. If I see value, like I try to be quite disciplined these days. I don't just bet to bet. It's only if I see value, and if I see value, I go hard. But if not, I'll stay away. So yeah, it all depends.
All right, so I'm looking at this card, and it's really a stacked card, as we said. And maybe we should start from the very top, and it's Leon Edwards against Kamaru Usman. So what do you know about Usman to begin with?
Well, Usman is, of course, a tremendous grappler. I think he showed it in the last fight, just up until the last round where he unfortunately got knocked out.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
Yeah, it was a real shocker, especially because that fight was in elevation. It was in Salt Lake City, and Usman traditionally has really good cardio. Not that Leon doesn't. I think his cardio is fine, but there's also a different type of cardio where grapplers have a really good grappling cardio, like they're conditioned to do a lot of grappling, whereas strikers can have good cardio, but they're just used to striking. So when the fight goes to the ground, or when they're pushed up against the cage, that really drains them, and it just loses a lot of knockout power that way.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a really good matchup for Usman. I still think it is, but it is a little bit sketchy now, for a few reasons. For one, this fight is in Leon's hometown, like in London. And it's a big, Usman is a bit older now. That fight, I believe, was 2 years ago. He's 36 years old. It's also a little bit sketchy when fighters coming off their first like knockout loss, especially like rematching the same opponent, and they haven't fought in between. So yeah, there's a lot of like red flags, I believe, in this matchup that didn't really exist in the last matchup. And also, this one isn't in elevation, so you can't really bank on Edwards getting tired and Usman having a significant cardio advantage this time around.
I see. We talked about before that if you play in Sweden, for example, on the Swedish market, and you be smart to play against Sweden. Is that something that you look around for? I mean, the market has settled a bit more these days. So, I mean, playing on Leon Edwards in London is probably not the best idea, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you like Usman in this matchup and you're looking to bet him, you'd be wise to wait and bet right before, because most of the people that are going to the fight or about to watch the fight on Saturday, they'll usually bet right before. And then usually you get some sharp action coming in there as well. But yeah, if you're looking to fade the household name or the big favorite, then it's always better to wait until the very last minute, I believe, from my experience.
Today is Tuesday, late at night and European time. And right now, Leon Edwards is almost 3 times the money, to 290. And Usman is 140. Do you think they're going to stabilize on something like that?
I think so. I think the line is probably about right now, given all the factors. I mean, Usman was dominating the fight from start to finish, well, not to finish, but up till the end where he got knocked out. So I mean, you could say that it was like a little bit of it was clearly a good stylistical matchup for Usman. And the knockout was a little bit of a fluke. But that being said, you're also paying a lot. You're paying $250 to win 100 if you're betting on Usman now. Even though he just got knocked out, and you have all these other factors like he's older and he's just got knocked out, and Leon is in London.
Yeah, and I mean the home soil thing is more obvious maybe in, I don't know, in football and so on, when you got the crowd against you and it helps you, but it can help you. It can create something special for a guy like Leon Edwards to fight with everyone.
Well, sure, yeah, I remember he's very emotional too. Which can be good or bad, but I'm sure he'll have like a huge support. With the British fans.
If we go to the second match, Justin Gaethje, is that how you say it? And Rafael Fizziev. It's almost the same numbers.
That's a great matchup too.
Yeah, it's a great match. I mean, Fizziev is pretty big favorite in that match too, but I mean, Justin is going to be great to see him, right?
Yeah, you can never count out Justin Gaethje. I've learned that.
Have you played against him or what?
Yeah, a few times, but usually I made a lot of money on him because I feel like he's always a bit underrated, and he's just so tough and he hits so hard. He doesn't look like it. He just looks like a pretty average guy. But once you're watching his fights, you see like he has absolutely no quit in him. He has an amazing shin. He's super durable, great cardio, insanely hard leg kicks. Also doesn't look like it, and really good striking. So. Yeah, he's a very, and he has his wrestling background too, which he's like never uses. So he's a very well-rounded and good fighter. But Fizziev, on the other hand, he's a beast. Like, he hits so hard that if anyone's gonna finish Gaethje, I think it's him. So I wouldn't be surprised, because Gaethje, he's getting older too. He's been taking a lot of damage in his last couple of fights. So I mean, all good things come to an end, right? So eventually someone like that's going to get brutally finished as well. So yeah, I think Fizziev definitely has the potential.
Yeah, it's almost like, I would say, compared to those Usman Edwards fight, it's almost like I would say that Fizziev should almost be a little bit bigger favorite in that match. But I don't know, but because I can't see Fizziev get knocked out, but you never know, of course.
You never know. No, exactly.
Yeah, this is interesting, because what do you think of female MMA fights, like the third one, Luana Carolina against Joanna Wood? Do you follow it as well? It's a sensitive question, Martin.
Yeah. No, I mean, I follow it for sure. I think the female division is a lot newer, obviously, so there's not as many fighters. So it's a lot shallower, and the gaps are a lot bigger than in the men's division, where it's a lot more competitive, I think. But there's definitely some really good female fighters out there, and I mean, this matchup, I think, can go kind of like either way. You know, both fighters are sort of like John Wood or Calderwood. She's been fighting for so long, and you know, Sometimes she shows up and she looks great, and sometimes she just like doesn't look like she wants to be there. So it's hard to predict how her fights are going to go. But I've always thought she's quite skilled and has potential. But now she's the tail end of her career, I would imagine. And I wouldn't put my money on her.
Right. If you would be a spokesperson for female MMA, tell someone that says something negative by female MMA, what would you say in a positive word about why female MMA is fun to watch?
I mean, it's what's the big difference? Yeah, it's a newer division. Like, it hasn't been around for as long. It's not as deep, and therefore they're not as skilled. Like, I don't think anyone can argue with that. It's also, but other than that, it's just the only difference is that they're females, and then it's really it's like, what's the difference? Like, a lot of people don't like watching the men flyweight division because they're too small.
Right.
They want to see heavyweights or 205ers because they're more exciting. Like, it's just, everyone has a preference.
I think there's something in. I remember, because I'm a little bit older than you, that really way back when the UFC came through, one of the great things were the upsets, and you saw things that you definitely didn't expect. And that can be a little bit more in female MMA. I think you can be surprised by, whoa, what was that? A little bit more.
For sure. I mean, we saw it last weekend when Valentina lost to Grasso. No one was expecting that.
Right. Yeah.
And likewise when Juliana Pena beat Nunes, that was also
that was a good fight.
She was like 7-1, underdog.
Yeah.
So same with Grasso. She was also around there, like 6 or 7-1. So huge upsets, which it should be exciting for most people.
Yeah.
And I think it's good too, because it shows that the division is still quite green and there's still exploits to be had. So I think there's definitely some good betting opportunity if you're studying the female fighters as well.
If you would go for Carolina for 250 or Joanne Wood 150, you would go for Carolina, you say?
I think so.
Yeah, if it stands as it is. But I think I agree with you, because it's more or less, it's more towards the 50-50 fight. And why not take the one that pays better?
Exactly.
Yeah. There you go. Okay,
that's always my motto.
We have this.
If you want to lay deuce in MMA, you need to have a really good reason to do so, I think.
Yeah, there it is. We have a Nordic country name here, Gunnar Nelson, of course, against Brian Barberena, where Gunnar Nelson is the biggest favorite on the card. What do you know about Gunnar?
I've followed Gunnar a lot. It's good to see him back. It's been a couple of years now, I think, since his last fight. I remember when he broke out on the scene, and he had really good potential, a lot of hype behind him, and he was just looking super impressive in his first couple of fights. And then he kind of like fell off a cliff a little bit. Like, he got knocked out in a couple of his fights. A lot of big upsets, guys that he probably should have beat but didn't. And then he'd been taking a few years off the sport and probably like working on his skill. Probably his, especially his striking and striking defense. Like, he's a really good karate, but sometimes that can leave you exposed because he's usually has his hands down. He stands that like wide stance, but he's also not afraid of getting taken down,
right? Because
his grappling, he's a very high level black belt. So that's where he wants this fight particularly. Like, Brian Barberena, he's also a very exciting fighter. So this should be a great fight for as long as it lasts. But I think if Gunnar can get this one down to the mat, it should be over fairly quickly. But yeah, easier said than done. Like, Brian Barberena is super tough, hits really, really hard. I remember watching his fight when he upset Sage Nordcut. He was a massive underdog, and he just like blew right through him. So kind of like, I wouldn't say a similar matchup, but like Sage also had that karate, like flashy striking style.
Yeah.
And Brian Barberena just like broke him basically in there. So hopefully Gunnar is well prepared, and managed to get that submission.
Yeah, is there? You spoke warmly of him. Is that something that, of course, it shouldn't get in the way of your sports betting tactics if you like someone more? But is it like it's even more exciting, of course, if there's a specific fighter that you are fond of in a way, right?
Of Gunnar?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I've always liked him, like his persona. He's very calm and like stoic in his approach, very methodical. Obviously, I think he's a great role model for the sport and aspirational. So yeah, I like him as a fighter, but no, I try not to let that affect my. I just look at the matchup and
yeah,
the
yeah.
data that's available,
Of course.
and then look at the price.
It's
see what makes sense.
some people that sports bet, they say sometimes when their heart's in the match, they just don't bet on it because you still have your heart in it, and sometimes that's enough.
Exactly, yeah.
Maybe something small, but when it comes to betting, maybe you should step away when your heart's in there, right?
Yeah. Back in the day, I remember I used to bet against my team just to have like a win-win situation.
That's funny. You're going to, right?
Yeah, it's not something I advise.
No. Okay, well, that's funny. It's like double fun or super bad,
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you don't want to gamble like that. All right, we go to the fifth match. It's Roman Dolidze against Marvin Vettori, where Vettori is the second biggest favorite out of the main card on 133 times the money and 325 on Roman Dolidze. What do you say about those two fighters?
Yeah, another exciting matchup here, and a fight that's probably can play out a lot closer than the betting line right now. I think Marvin Vettori has traditionally been very underrated. I feel like he never gets the respect he deserves. Like I remember his fight versus Costa, where he went 5 hard rounds and basically like dominated that fight versus a super tough opponent, and I believe it was an underdog there. So I think he's for sure the right betting favorite. He's a very well-rounded fighter. Dolidze is super exciting to watch. He can, you never know really what version you're gonna get, but he definitely has capabilities of getting an exciting finish. But I think if you play this fight out, if this fight plays out 10 times out of 8 times out of 9, 8 times out of 10, I think Marvin Vettori would take it. So I think he's the rightful favorite for sure.
Well, that's of course always one of the exciting things with fighting is someone can get that lucky punch, or you just lose concentration for a second, or hit that combination, and an upset can come, and that's always puts an extra spark to this sport, I think.
Yeah, if the favorite was winning all the time, it wouldn't be that exciting, right? It's like if we were playing poker and
it's not
the
like
best
chess.
Player won every time. Like, where the excitement be?
Yeah, it's not like chess at all.
No, exactly.
The best player. Okay.
Yeah, chess is it's one of the few sports where the best players always win.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. You could go down to if you go to sports. Usain Bolt was just winning for a while. There's been sports like where some has dominated totally, but this is something else. We have Omar Morales and Chris Duncan, which is the most even fight. 183 on Morales and 190. It's really tight between those two. Who would you think will win that fight?
This one I haven't actually studied. I don't know his. I know Omar Morales. I used to be really high on him. I thought he had very good potential. Like his striking is really good, and he's a well-rounded fighter too. Like he has a decent ground game. But his last couple of fights, he hasn't looked that good at all. Like maybe it was a bad matchup. I can't remember who his last fight was, but I haven't studied his opponent at all. But I would probably blindly still bet Omar, just from what I know with him. I wouldn't bet him, but I would pick him.
Yeah.
Gun to my head. But yeah, I would definitely do some more research on that one and see what his opponent is about, where his strengths and weaknesses lies, and how he matches up with Omar.
Yeah. It's truly an exciting card. There's prelims and so on throughout, but we have the main card there. You think it's going to be a good atmosphere in London? Is London a good town for people who go and watch fights like this? Arena.
I haven't been to a London card in a while. It's probably been age of 70 years since I went to one at the O2. But yeah, I think especially for this card and Leon in the main event, I think for sure, like I believe it's sold out already. So yeah, it will be full packed, great atmosphere, lots of people, and yeah, really good time.
Yeah, I can see in your face now that you're a little bit sad that you're not there. But I mean, you are in a good place.
Yeah, I went to Jones last weekend, so I can't complain.
Yeah. If you would stay in London, you wouldn't have seen the Jones fight. So, how long are you going to stay in Vegas or in America?
I'm here for another week, and then I'm going to Whistler from here
Good skier?
for a short ski trip. Snowboard, yeah.
Snowboard, yeah, that's right. You like to snowboard. Are you good?
I'm okay. Yeah, I average about one trip per year, so
That's good. And Whistler is a good place to go?
yeah, I've been once before, and I really enjoyed it. It's not too far from here. It's like a 2 hour flight, 3 hour flight to Vancouver, and then a short drive.
Yeah.
But yeah, they got some good slopes.
That's nice. And what are the plans when it comes to poker in the coming month?
It's pretty quiet. So after Whistler, I'll go to Cape Town for a month, and over there's not much poker at all. So I'll take some time off before the World Series and Scoop and all that. And then
You're aiming big for Scoop? You're going to play a lot there?
I think so. Yeah. I'm trying to decide where to play it from. Ideally, I would like to be in the U.S. time zone, so you start in the morning rather than the late afternoon and play all night.
Yeah. So you haven't decided yet, but that's good. I understand. We talked about that before because it's kind of draining in the long series like Scoop. It's so many events, and if you just play nighttime through, I like it.
Yeah. It's a pretty big disadvantage, I believe.
Yeah, that it is. And then for the WSOP in the summer, how long have you planned to go there? I know you've been discussing back and forth on how much time you want to spend in Vegas in the summer. What are your plans?
I booked for it all, so I'm going to do a full summer.
A full summer.
And yeah, honestly, I can't wait. I'm really excited about it.
I mean, there's highs. I mean, there's nothing getting close to the World Series, is it?
No, there really isn't.
Why? Why? For those who haven't tried it, I mean, you won it once, the main event, which is so sick. We don't even need to talk about it more. But what makes the World Series so outstandingly cool?
I think it's just a history about the event and the series and the prestige. They've added a lot of bracelet events, so unfortunately it's gotten a little bit diluted, but it's still...
What do you mean with that? In what way?
So like in the past, the World Series used to consist of maybe 45, 50 events. Nowadays, there's 120 bracelet events over the course of a summer. So they've added a lot of events, which means you have 120 bracelet winners each year. And for every bracelet winner you add, it's not the same. Right. Like you can win a bracelet now with just a $300 entry.
Yeah.
Whereas it used to be like $1,500 or above. So they completely changed their strategy, which I think is good for the game long term because it brings new players in and. From all levels. So, you have people coming in for these massive, they put big guarantees on the events like the Colossus and the Giants and all of these names.
Millie makers.
Money. Yeah. They had $1 million bounty, like $1,000 entry where you can play multiple entries and one player pulled $1 million bounty.
Wow.
In the mystery bounty. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to do that event again because it was a massive success.
Yeah.
They're just going to keep adding smaller events like that.
Yeah. It's good to see the good and the bad of it. Of course, there's a little bit of devaluation of the value of the bracelet. But, I mean, what do you think about Bally Paris, the setup from last year?
I think it was a huge upgrade from the Rio. Just the fact that it's on the Strip. I think that's the main component. You have so many more options. You can walk around for breaks and in terms of staying on the Strip. And also spreading awareness. You know, they have these big signs now back on the strip, like World Series at Paris, like come here.
Yeah.
You get in a lot of new players that way, I think.
Yeah.
And a lot more awareness. People come and watch. Yeah, it was a really good vibe last year. I really enjoyed it.
And I think also that it was the first year last year. Of course, there would be a lot of difficulties for them when it comes to traffic and parking and food and whatever. And I'm sure they learned from the first year, and they're going to improve this year on some of the parts where they struggle a little bit. But overall, it's a really good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, you would hope so.
Yeah. I think so.
We'll see.
Well, excellent, Martin. It was good. It was fun to talk some other stuff. We talk about MMA sometimes, but it's exciting times. Do you have a favorite fighter from all the weight classes right now?
No, not really.
No.
I have a few guys that I like more than others. Like Dustin Poirier, for example. Like I just but it's mostly like personal, like not really like their style. It's like how they carry themselves, in win or defeat, or what they do outside the sport. Like he's doing a lot of charitable work. He has his own business, and I like that stuff. And then you have other fighters that are the complete opposite.
Yeah, I remember we talked about the Diaz brothers back in 7-8 years ago, that you kind of liked them, and you get to meet them as well, didn't you?
Yeah. I'm still friends with Nick. I saw him at the Win actually the other week.
Okay. Yeah.
He was in town for the fights.
Yeah.
I'm obviously a huge fan of them. Like I'm biased there because I know them personally. But, I mean they're so much fun, and like I think finally they're getting the respect they deserve, or the attention, for such unique personalities, and they've done so much for the sports over the years.
Yeah, for sure, and they just kept on giving in a way. It's a little bit thing that when it goes back like 25 years in poker, there were all these cowboy hats, and there was all these people and all these characters, and maybe some people had said that poker has gone into. They lost a little bit of personality among the poker players. There are not as many. There are more shades and so on. Do you think it's a little bit like that in fighting as well? If you know what I mean.
No, I don't think so yet. I mean, yes, a little bit. I mean, it's not. Like looking back, back in the day, there was more polarizing personalities than it is today. Now, a lot of them are becoming more and more serious. Everyone has their nutritionist and sports. Whereas back in the day, it was more polarizing. It was like the Gracies, the jiu-jitsu guys, and Rampage with the Shane, and Lesnar with the hammer. And it was more like WWE almost.
Yeah.
And now it's becoming more of a professional sport. So it's settled a little bit, but you still have a lot of strong personalities like Nick and Nate and Connor and guys that are great at promoting the sport, for better or worse.
Mostly for better. I mean, mostly for wider anyway.
All attention is good attention.
Yeah. That's good. Okay, Martin, it was great talking to you, and I guess you're going to follow the fights from a TV in Vegas or something, right?
For sure, yeah. I'll be watching live here. I believe it starts at 10 a.m.
Yeah, it's going to be a long day in London. I'm going to be there. If I see a camera,
enjoy, man.
I'm going to wave to you there.
Please.
All right. We'll talk soon again, and we'll see maybe before the World Series or something, and we'll have a talk again, Martin.
Yeah, definitely, man.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Enjoy the fights.